Hey everyone, tonight we're diving into something a bit darker. Time of plagues, punishments, and questionable pottage. Chances are you wouldn't have lasted a single day back then. So before you settle in, if you enjoy the content I'm making, you can support me by simply liking the video and subscribing to hear more from me. Drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. I always love seeing the variety of people tuning in from across the globe down now. Dim the lights, maybe switch on a fan, a rare conditioner for that gentle ambient hum, and let's slip quietly into tonight's journey together. You wake in darkness. The cold presses against your skin, seeping through straw and thin wool. Your bed is a sack stuffed with hay. Lice scurry through it, and rats scuffle in the corners of the thatched roof hut. You don't rise at Donu. Rise with the bells of the monastery or the rooster's crow, depending on what governs your village. There is no privacy. Your entire family sleeps in the same room, possibly the same bed. Smoke clings to the rafters. There's no chimney, just a hole in the roof. Your throat stings from it, but you're used to that. You cough, spit into the dirt floor, and swing your legs over the side of the bed. You don't own shoes. If you do, they're thin leather, patched a dozen times, stiff with wear. Your feet are cracked, dirty, hardened by frost and dung. You step outside. The mud sucks at your heels. It stinks of pigs, of humans, of waste poured into ditches that run beside your hut. Everyone lives like this. The idea of clean doesn't exist as you'd understand it today. You tend the animals furtive. Your lord allows you to keep any chickens, maybe a goat if you're lucky. Then comes the work, the field. You swing a wooden hoe into frozen soil, or cut barley under a blazing sun. Your back aches constantly. So does your stomach. Bread and onions are your usual meal. If there's any bread left, you eat what you can grow, and you grow what the Lord allows, because none of this belongs to you. The land, his. The mill, his. The woods, the rivers, the roads, his. Everything you harvest, every loaf you bake, every pig you raise, he takes a share. Sometimes most of it. You are a serf. That means bound to the land like a tree, like a stone. You cannot leave without permission. You cannot marry without permission. You cannot even grind your own grain without paying for the Lord's mill. Your life is labor and permission. You are not a slave. Not exactly, but you're not free either. And yet you survive, not because the world is kind, but because you've learned how to live with its cruelty. Your hands are calloused, your joints swollen. You feel old by the time you're 30. Many don't make it that far. Disease is a constant. Shadow, typhoid, dysentery, the pox. You don't know what causes it. No one does. You only know that when it comes, it kills. Whole families vanish in a week. You've seen children buried in shallow graves behind the church. No coffin, just a cloth, maybe a wooden cross. You don't cry as much anymore. Grief has become a neighbor. And when famine comes, and it does, Every few years you eat what you can. Bark, weeds, rats. You watch neighbors starve. You wonder if you'll be next. Sometimes the church offers bread. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes people riot. They're hanged for it. Publicly. The church looms large in every part of your life. Its bells mark your days. Its priests speak for God. You can't read the Bible yourself. It's in Latin, but you're told what it says. Believe it, because it's all you've ever known. Heaven and hell aren't ideas, they're certainties. You fear sin like fire. You fear the devil more than death. The village priest tells you your suffering is holy, that this life is a test, that obedience will be rewarded. So you kneel, you pray, you tithe what little you have. You confess your thoughts, even when you're not sure they were sinful. You live in fear of plague, of war, of judgment, of your Lord's temper, of eternal damnation. But you also find moments of peace, a good harvest, a festival day, the sound of a lute by firelight. The village gathers. There is singing. There is drink. There is a reminder, however brief, that you are alive. And then it's back to work. The seasons rule you. Spring brings mud and hope. Summer brings labor and heat. Autumn means the harvest. Winter means hunger. There is no pause, no vacation, no safety net. If you're a woman, your burden is double. You rise before the sun, cook over flame, gather water, raise children, birth them, bury them. You might be married at 14. You might bear 10 children and lose 5. If you are widowed, you might remarry. If not, you survive alone if you can. You belong to your father, then your husband, then your son, and yet you endure, because there is no other choice. The manor house looms above your village like a symbol carved in stone you'll never touch. Floors you'll never walk. The Lord who owns your land lives there, surrounded by tapestries, armored guards, and meat-heavy feasts. You see, Pin ride past, sometimes, clad in a fur cloak, flanked by knights in chainmail. You don't make eye contact. You bow your head. You're invisible to him, unless he needs something. His word is law. If he wants your cart, your pig, your daughter, there's little recourse. Some lords are just, others are cruel. Most are distant. Their lives are too far removed from yours to even resemble humanity. They read, write, speak French or Latin. You speak your dialect, full of words shaped by mud and labor. Sometimes the king's men pass through, collecting taxes, drafting men for war. You don't know what the war is about, something to do with a border, a throne, a slight. None of it means anything to you. Still, your son may be taken. He might never come back. If he does, he'll be changed. If he dies, it will be in a place you'll never see, for a cause you'll never understand. Justice isn't fair. If you're accused of theft, heresy, or insulting the wrong person, you may be whipped, caged, or executed. Trials are a formality, and punishment is often public done to make an example of you. Stocks in the square, hangings, mutilation. People gather not out of cruelty, but because there's little else to do. Entertainment is rare. When war comes to your village, it arrives like fire. Soldiers march in, crops are trampled, women are dragged into barns, churches are looted. The only warning is the sound of hooves. If you're lucky, they take only food. If not, there may be nothing left. And still, life must continue. Fields must be plowed. Children must eat. Graves must be dug. Trade is limited, unless you live near a road or a river. Most things are made by hand. Your bowl, your shoes, your clothes. A blacksmith might fix your tools. A tanner might sell you a belt, but coins are scarce. You trade goods, labor, favors. You don't buy bread, you bake it. You don't buy clothes, you spin them. Every stitch is a quiet act of survival. But even in all this, there is art, there is music. A traveling bard may pass through with songs from distant lands. A church may commission a mural. The monastery illuminates holy texts with gold leaf and brilliant colors. You may never see them, but they exist. They are proof that even in the mud, people dream, and you poor, tired, uneducated, might never know it, but you are the backbone, base of this world. You are the one who feeds it, builds it, holds it up through every frost and famine. You are forgotten by history, but without you, history never moves. Sometimes a rumor spreads a comet seen in the sky, a knight returning from a far-off war, a new tax imposed by the king. Word travels slow, twisted by every tongue it passes. You hear of distant cities, London, Paris, Rome, but they might as well be myth. You know only your village, your lord, your church, your fields. The rest is a murmur behind the trees. And then one day the plague comes. It doesn't announce itself. It moves like a shadow over the land. First a fever, then swelling, angry lumps in the neck, armpits, groin, a rash, then blood, then death. Fast, horribly fast. You've heard stories from travelers, whole towns emptied, fields untended, corpses left in the street. When it reaches your village, it strikes like lightning. The priest falls ill, then the miller, then children. Families lock their doors. Some flee into the forest, hoping to outrun God's wrath. Others pray harder, whip themselves, beg the saints for mercy. Nothing stops it. The graveyard fills, then the fields around it, then the riverbanks. You dig holes with trembling hands, not knowing if you'll be in one next week, but somehow some survive. The disease burns itself out. The silence that follows is worse than the screams. Entire families are gone. Houses stand empty, doors swinging open in the wind. The church bells stop ringing, Dot, and the world changes, Dot. With so many dead, the old rules begin to bend. Land lies fallow. Lords can't harvest enough grain. Labor becomes rare, and rare things become valuable. You hear something new presents, demanding wages, refusing to work for free, moving to other villages. You never thought you'd see it, but for the first time, the serf has a choice. Rebellion stirs. In some places, it burns. The lords try to crush it, but the idea has already taken root, that the people who do the work should have a say, that maybe just, maybe they deserve more than obedience and scraps. And though the revolts fail, and the lords remain, the world will not go back to how it was. The old order is cracked. You are still poor, still afraid, but something is shifting beneath your feet. You feel it when the Lord lowers his taxes, when a neighbor leaves to work in a city, when a village chooses its own leader for the first time in memory. Change is coming, not quickly, not kindly, but it is coming, and in your bones, after a lifetime, by of silence and survival, you begin to believe that maybe the world could be more than it was, that your life might mean something more than obedience, that history, long written by kings and priests and lords, might someday remember the hands that turned the soil, raised the walls, buried the dead, and kept the world turning. You see the world as a great chain, and you are at the bottom. Above you are the knights and nobles, armored and educated, feasting in their halls while you break your back in the fields. Above them, the clergymen in robes who speak Latin, hold sacred books you can't read, and claim power drawn directly from God. And at the very top, kings' figures so distant and divine in the eyes of common folk that they might as well be gods themselves. You were born into this station, and you will die in it. That's how the world works. Questioning it isn't just dangerous, it's unthinkable. You believe the hierarchy is natural. It's been preached to you since childhood. Nobles protect, clergy guide, and peasants labor. Everyone has their place. But while the lords may have their castles and fine linen, you have mud. Your home is built from it. Your streets run with it. Your skin wears it. There is no running water, no sewage. Human waste is dumped into open ditches. The stench is everywhere, and you barely notice anymore. It's just life, bathing, rare, unless you're wealthy. You wash your hands and face, maybe once a week. Full baths are luxuries, reserved for religious purification or in towns. Shared public bathhouses, though those grow less common as fear of disease and sin creeps in. You smell of smoke, sweat, and soil. Everyone does dot when disease strikes. It spreads like fire through a forest. People don't know about bacteria or viruses. They believe illness is caused by bad air, sign, or an imbalance of the 4 bodily humors: blood, phlegm, yellow, bile, black. Bile. Doctors might bleed you, prescribe crushed herbs, or apply leeches. Sometimes they simply pray. Priests say it's divine punishment. Astrologers say it's the stars. You don't question it, you survive it if you can. And it's not just illness that kills. Injury does too. A broken bone, an infected cut, a rotten tooth, any of them can turn fatal. There are no hospitals, no anesthetic. A broken leg might be, an arrow wound might be sewn shut with animal gut. You bite leather and scream. Women suffer uniquely. They are expected to birth children, often young, and with no medical aid. The risk of dying in childbirth is ever present. Stillbirths are common, Many women bury more children than they raise. They cook, clean, tend gardens, raise livestock, bear children, and endure. Their work is constant, unseen, and unpaid. Marriage isn't a union of love. It's duty. A daughter is often wed by the age of 14, usually to a man much older, chosen by her father or lord. Her value is her body, her ability to produce sons and serve in silence. You see the world in cycles: birth, work, hunger, death. Nothing is guaranteed, not even childhood. Many babies die in their first year. A fever, a cough, or a single bad winter can snuff out a life before it begins. If you live past the age of 5, you're considered strong. Children grow up fast. By 7 or 8, they're helping in the fields, carrying water, herding animals, watching siblings. Play exists, but it's fleeting wooden toys, sticks, chasing dogs through the dirt. Education is rare. If you're lucky and a monastery or cathedral is nearby, you might learn to read Latin, especially if you're a boy destined for the church. For most, your hands learn before your mind does. You don't dream of changing your station. You can't. The world doesn't bend. Even traveling is forbidden unless granted permission by your lord. You're tied to the land, just like your father was, and his father before him. You are part of the land, and the land is owned by someone else. And yet, stories travel. You hear of strange beasts from far-off lands, of saints who walked on water, of relics that can cure blindness or raise the dead. The church controls more than your soul. It controls your imagination. It paints your world in sacred mysteries and fearful wonders. Church is your theater, your courtroom, your calendar. Holy days mark time. Priests bless the fields before planting. Bless the bread before eating. Bless your child before burial. You live in the church's shadow, and it lives in your bones. But even the clergy aren't all the same. At the top, bishops live richly in palaces, dressed in silk, eating meat every day. They command vast lands, collect tithes, and speak with kings. Below them, monks and nuns live in stone monasteries, cloistered from the world, copying sacred texts by candlelight. They are the keepers of knowledge, of books, music, and medicine. And then there's your village priest, often the only educated man you know. He guides you, teaches you, sometimes abuses his power. He hears your confessions, marries you, baptizes your children, and buries your dead. His word is God's word, but the church is not all holy. It's powerful, and power corrupts. Some sell forgiveness for coin, some exploit the poor, hoard wealth, and manipulate kings. But no one dares challenge it openly. To question the church is to question salvation itself. And for that, there's only one punishment: fire beyond your village. Wars rage. You might not know who started them or why, but you feel their consequences: higher taxes, drafted sons, burned crops. Knights, armored and trained from youth, ride off in the name of kings and faith. They kill for honor, for land, for God. And when, bay return. They do not always come as protectors. Knights are symbols of glory in song and story, but in truth, they are weapons shaped by the powerful. You watch them ride past in armor, worth more than your village, their swords gleaming, banners fluttering. They train in combat from childhood, taught to fight on horseback, wield lances, crush enemies with maces. But their nobility doesn't always mean mercy. Some enforce the Lord's will with brutality. Others, in war, pillage as freely as any invader. Their code of chivalry, protection, loyalty is more often ideal than practice. A starving serf doesn't feel chivalry when a knight rides him down for gathering firewood in the Lord's forest. That forest, too, is not yours, even though your ancestors may have walked it, hunted in it, depended on it tip, belongs to the Lord. You may be fined or whipped for poaching a rabbit to feed your child. Land is sacred, but not in the holy sense. It is wealth, and wealth is power. All of it flows upward. The tools of war are simple, yet devastating. Bows, spears, swords. Later, the longbow changes everything. A peasant can kill a knight from a distance. Castles rise like stone mountains, built by your hands, occupied by those who tax them. Sieges can last months. Starvation becomes the battlefield. Fire and disease do the rest. Still, war isn't constant. Most years are filled with repetition, plowing, planting, reaping. You learn to read the sky, trust the soil, fear the frost. A failed crop means hunger. A second means death. You store grain in guarded bins. You salt meat when you can afford it. Winter is always near. And when cities grow, everything shifts. Merchants rise. Tradesmen organize. Guilds form carpenters, blacksmiths, weavers. You hear of people buying their freedom, gaining status through skill instead of blood. It's rare, but real. In towns, a clever man might rise. In cities, ideas begin to travel faster. Some challenge old beliefs. Some envision more than fields and feudal chains. Paper spreads. Books multiply slowly. Literacy cracks the ceiling. Buy of the old world. A peasant might not read yet, but his lord's scribe doesn't. That scribe hears new words. Science, reform, heresy. Change stirs in script and parchment, long before it marches in boots. You do not see the future, but you are part of its foundations. Every stone you lift, every child you raise, every field you sit feeds the world that will one day rise above this mud and fire. And though your name may not be remembered, your struggle shapes history. The medieval world is not just kings and castles. It's your hands, your sweat, your silence. You are the beating heart beneath the crown. You carry stories, not written, but spoken. Tales your grandmother whispered by firelight of saints and dragons, of angels watching fields and devils hiding in woods. These stories are your history, your morality, your comfort. You pass them to your children, who will pass them to theirs. Superstition guides your steps as much as faith. A charm tied to the cradle keeps away the night hag. Garlic above the door wards off illness. A bent nail under the threshold brings good fortune. The church might call them pagan relics, but you cling to both saints in the chapel, spirits in the well. When times are hard, you don't ask why. You know why. God is testing you. That's what you've been taught. Misery is the path to heaven, so you don't curse it. You endure. You kneel in cold churches and sing hymns you barely understand. You light candles for the dead and pray that someone someday will light one for you. Seasons pass. A new priest arrives, stricter than the last. The baron dies. His son takes over, raising taxes. A mill is built nearby. Someone you know vanishes into the forest and never returns. A stranger passes through town, speaking of wars in distant lands, of ships with sails like wings, of lands across oceans. You begin to feel the old order fray. A traveling preacher denounces the church's wealth. He draws a crowd, then disappears. Later, they say he was burned. You don't know what to believe, but something is changing. Even the air feels different. You notice that people are moving more. Roads are being repaired. Markets are larger. Coins change hands faster than harvests. The town grows. You hear foreign accents, see strange fabrics, new food, new ideas. A merchant's daughter wears colored silk from the east. A monk shows a diagram of the stars. A boy down the road can read the Lord's Prayer. Then you hear a word you never heard before. Printing. Not long after. Everything begins to shift. Books, so rare they were chained to monastery desks, now multiply. One speaks of astronomy. Another challenges old teachings. You cannot read them, but others can. They speak of reason, of reform, of rights. And somewhere deep inside, though you still wake with the sun, walk barefoot in the mud. Bury your dead with trembling hands, you feel the tremble of something new. You are no longer just a cog in the machine of feudal life. You are part of a world that is waking up, and though you will not see the Renaissance, the revolutions, the new empires, and ideas, they will all be born from the soil you've toiled in, from the children you've raised, from the world you've kept alive through fire and frost. You are the forgotten foundation, but without you, there would be nothing above. You rise again with the sun, but now something is different. The world, though still ruled by lords and bishops and kings, begins to stretch. Cities grow taller, markets get louder, coins change hands faster. There are whispers in the corners, vile houses about new lands across the sea, about books no priest wrote, about men who question what no one dared question before. You hear of a man named Copernicus who says the earth is not the center of the universe. You do not understand the details, but the idea rattles something in your bones. If the earth can move, maybe other things can too. Maybe the world itself is not fixed. You hear of a man named Luther who nails words to a church door. Words that call out the greed of those who sell salvation. You do not read Latin, but his message spreads anyway through pulpits, through songs, through rumor. Some say the church trembles. Others say God weeps. What you know is this: the old truths no longer feel untouchable. Not to the lords, not to the priests, and maybe not forever to you. The printing press spreads stories faster than swords. Once you needed a monk and a candle and 6 months to make a single book. Now you need only paper and ink. Knowledge no longer belongs to monasteries. It moves with merchants, with rebels, with thinkers, but change brings danger. New wars rise, not just over land, but over belief. Villages are split not by rivers or borders, but by doctrine. Protestants and Catholics, reformers and loyalists. Men are burned not for theft, but for thinking. The world is bigger, no, but sharper. To dot, science grows in shadows. Astronomy, alchemy, anatomy. You hear strange things, that blood flows in a loop, that the stars don't dictate fate, that lightning can be understood. You don't know if it's true, but the world seems to tilt with possibility. Cities are no longer just crowded, they're alive. Apprentices learn trades, guilds protect their own, universities emerge, guarded by stone walls and filled with questions. Not all people live in fields anymore. Some rise, some write, some question. And though you still live close to the earth, though your hands are still cracked and your meals still thin, you can feel it. The future is no longer waiting. It is arriving. The fields are still here. So are the lords, the taxes, the fear of hunger and cold. But now there's a glimmer at the edge of the villager road that leads somewhere else, somewhere new. You know someone who left, a cousin, maybe, or a neighbor's son. They went to the city, found work with a tanner, a baker, a merchant, learned to read, sent a letter home. You couldn't read it yourself, but someone read it aloud in the square. And just hearing it, the sound of your cousin's name in ink and voice, felt like a door cracking open. You wonder if your child will go too, and you wonder if that's be a good thing, because the world outside is wide, yes, but dangerous too. Not just wolves and warlords now, but debts, laws, and cities that devour the weak. But even knowing that there's something about that road that pulls at you, you can't see the Renaissance, but you feel the weight of things blooming. Art moves from cathedral walls to canvas. Music leaves the choir and enters taverns and courts. Architecture reaches for the heavens, not only for God's sake, but for beauty's. A man sculpts marble to look like living flesh, and it stuns nobles and peasants alike, and exploration begins. Strange ships set sail from ports you've only heard of in rumor. Sailors speak of distant lands beyond the sea, filled with unknown people, new spices, gold. Most of it sounds like lies or sin, but maps are changing. Oceans are no longer borders, they're doorways. Some say the world is ending. Others say it's being reborn. You don't know which it is, but you work your field with a little more fire in your chest, not because the harvest is any easier, but because, for the first time in generations, it feels like there's more to learn, more to see. more than just surviving. And for the first time, someone asks your name, writes it down. Your name, not your Lord's name, not your father's trade, yours, etched in ink, not scratched on a headstone or scrawled on a tithe roll. A record that you lived, that you were not just a shadow in the background of someone else's glory. The world starts to remember people like you. You're still poor. You still pray before every meal, not just in thanks, but in hope the food stretches to the next one. You still mend your own shoes, still fear winter, still keep a knife under your pillow in case of wolves or worse. But your child might learn letters, might hold a book instead of a shovel, might dream in color, not just in labor, because even the sky is different now, no longer a ceiling, but a frontier. The stars are no longer fixed candles in the dome of heaven. They move. The earth moves. The very idea that the heavens are in motion, that everything might be in motion echoes down through every village road, every city alley, every prayer. And if the heavens are not fixed, maybe the world isn't either. Maybe the place of the peasant is not eternal. Maybe the weight of your suffering wasn't holy, it was history. And maybe history can be rewritten. The old world, the one built on unshakable lines between king and serf, man and woman, clergy and commoner, it begins to split, slowly, painfully, but it does. And though you still die young, still bury children, still carry buckets of water across frozen ground, you do so in a world that is cracking open, a world where ideas travel faster than swords, where belief is debated not just in cathedrals but in the street, where knowledge can fall into the hands of anyone, bold enough to seek it. You are not free yet, but you are closer, and somewhere beyond. The next hill, beyond the next book, beyond the next rebellion, or song, or ship. Someone will live in a world that you helped make possible, and they won't know your name, but they will live because you did. The story ends, and if you are still here and fully awake, then you are very patient or very interested in the story. If that's the case, please leave a like and subscribe so you can hear more from me, and because they will fire me if you don't. Now, I will leave the rest of you who have fallen asleep to rest with this fire effect. Enjoy and have a nice dream.